Welcome to the episode on returning to training post-holidays. If you're like most people, you might be eager to jump back into your workouts and make up for lost time. But before you do, it's important to consider the concept of load management. Taking a break from your training can cause a loss of conditioning, but it's common to want to play catch up and make up for any weight gained over the break. However, trying to pick up where you left off can actually increase the risk of injury. To avoid this and achieve your fitness goals, it's important to ease back into your training and gradually build up your strength and conditioning. This is especially true if you've had more than a week off or if you've been inconsistent with your workouts. In these cases, it's best to regress your training and avoid advanced overload methods. So remember, when returning to your workouts post-holidays, pay attention to load management to avoid injury and achieve your goals. Now, we've seen this already in our UMS app tribe in even just the first couple of weeks. Coming back to training, we've seen a couple of people reporting that they've got some niggling injuries because they tried to pick up where they went off. Now, of course, if you didn't know, I've got my brother Yanni here. How are you, mate?
What's up? I was wondering if you were meant to see me or not, but here we are. Here we are using new software, and it's a new year, so it's very fitting. And we've got some
OGs here. Yes, we've got Andy saying he's a bit rusty. He only got the second comment. You're missing out, Andy. And I'm testing out. I'm using this new software, right? It's taken me a lot to work out how to do. So I'm going to try seeing what happens when I write in here if it comes up. But anyway, there we go. And we've got D as well, of course. And there we go. Unity Gym has commented. How good is that?
Yo.
Awesome. How exciting. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Andy. Welcome, D. Great to have you here. It's especially great to have Andy here, who is one of our high achievers, and he's actually participating right now in one of our challenges in the UMS app, where we have had for those who started up with us when the app went live back in, I think it was June. We were doing, phase every month. So phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we finished phase 6 last year, and we looked at going straight into phase 7 this year. But Yanni and me kind of just forgot this really critical principle that we're going to talk about today.
You forgot, I didn't.
Which is, you absolutely shouldn't pick up where you left off. And so what we've done is we've got our members that were even up to phase 7, they've gone back to phase 4, which is the first phase where we do 5 by 5. So 5 sets of 5 reps, and which is a really good way for somebody that's more experienced to get started with their training again without going into a more advanced overload technique. And phase 7 uses the rest pause method, if I'm not mistaken. Phase 6 is wave loading, and it's just way too much load on the body, isn't it, Yanni, to go straight into a more advanced overload method like that?
Yeah, look, well, I want to take a little bit of a rewind, hit the rewind button, and talk about my selfishness, because I actually prefer every year to start the year with whole body training for one program phase. And there's a very specific reason for that. And there's one scenario where I wouldn't do that, which is if I was currently injured or had something that I wanted to overcome, a structural imbalance or a known structural imbalance, in which case I'd go back to structural balance training instead of whole body training. But the reason why I do whole body training is because, I always take a couple of weeks off over the Christmas break. I plan my training in that way. And I personally suggest that everyone, I think it's advisable for a number of reasons. It's a great time to invest that little bit of time that you take to give to yourself in training into other areas of your life. Like, you've got some window up on the screen, Rad.
I do. No one else is seeing that. It's only what you see.
Very confusing. Where was I? So I think it's important because it's a great opportunity to invest that time. If you look at our lives, we spend a disproportionate amount of our lives sleeping, or we should. And then from there, the next amount of time we spend is usually at work or in our careers. And then we have a few hours, give or take, to invest in our family, our education, and our relationships, whether that's peers, work colleagues, or friends. And I like to really deploy that time asset into different things over the Christmas break, and that might be, this time I did a course, an investment course, and spend time with family. I caught up with my immediate family and spent some time with my girlfriend and things like that. And during that time, I don't prioritize exercise as much. I do try to exercise a bit, but it's often different. It's not the same regime. It's usually much less intensity. It's usually much less volume. It's usually much less frequency. And often even the exercise complexity changes, and I don't focus on as much exercise complexity. And so coming back to exercise, you've almost got to treat yourself like a beginner again. If Rad and I had a bit of a debate offline about the threshold, and I was going to say 2 weeks, but Rad's absolutely right. It's more than a week, and I would even go so far as to say more than 5 days. If you haven't trained for 5 days, like you've abstained from exercise for more than 5 consecutive days, and this is the important part, you've changed from a regular routine of training very consistently. So if you're not used to training consistently, this isn't going to affect you as much. But if you've been training, for instance, in the UMS Pro 4, 5, or 6 days a week, and even in the UMS HIT 3 days a week, and then you abstain from exercise for 5 days consecutively, you lose a lot of conditioning. From that 6th day onwards, your body is really regressing, and it regresses fast. Now, it comes back very quickly. It's kind of like riding a push bike. It only takes a week or two, and you're kind of back, maybe 21 days, and you're almost back on par where you were before. Unlike when you completely start as a beginner, it takes months and months to gain that conditioning or level of conditioning. But you have to treat yourself as a beginner again. And I really like whole body style circuit training for beginners. It just makes you feel great. It helps level up that muscle, joint, and nervous system conditioning, the metabolic system conditioning. It's great to offset any calorie surplus that you've consumed over the Christmas break, because it is the best. HIT high intensity interval training circuits are by far one of the best ways to create a calorie deficit. And when combined with, the step tracker that we use in UMS, getting your 10,000 steps every day, making sure that you're getting that non-exercise,
non-exercise
activity thermogenesis. Yeah.
Next exercise.
Non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Mouthful, isn't it?
You're getting those incidental exercises, bouts of exercise throughout the day. Then you're gonna be back on board really, really quickly. Very selfishly last year, I sort of said I want to create this program. One, I spun it to Rad because I thought it would be a very good way for new people to come into our ecosystem, because it is arguably the best way for new people to train. It helps overcome any body composition issues that you've got. It helps condition the body. It helps prepare you for bigger things to come. But very selfishly, I just wanted it for my January program. And so we put it together, and our guys are loving it. And we've got a challenge going right now. And I did my first workout yesterday, and it felt great. It absolutely owned me, because you often try to go in there lifting the same sorts of weights that you would usually lift in a body split workout program. And the accumulative volume of the circuit hits you real quick. Much less rest and recovery. I think the first phase is a 40-30 split. So we're working for 40 seconds, which is roughly 10 to 12 reps, and then resting for 30 seconds. And it's great. It was a great workout. I loved it. Have you tried one of these yet, Rad?
Have I tried them? Well, I recorded them.
Well, other than the recording where you were lifting baby weights.
Oh yeah. Well, of course. I mean, we did this style of training for years. It was one of the styles of training that we adopted quickly at Unity Gym, because it's just so popular. And then we went into developing what's now known as the UMS Pro, and that is the more advanced, body part specific style training. That's really, really good for people when they, get to our level, or when they get to even just after several months and they want to go a bit further. But yeah, this style of training is, it's very challenging, to say the least. and it's it's a lot of fun. It really gets the heart rate up, and it ticks all the UMS boxes. It's still developing strength, flexibility, fitness, all in the same workout. It's really, really good. And I actually got off track because you were riffing for so long there, but I had a point that I wanted to say about about having 5 days off or more with your training. Look, the thing is that what Yanni was talking about there, it's absolutely referring to people that are following a proper program. Because if you're following a program like UMS Pro, where you do a new phase every 4 weeks, and then so each 4 weeks you use progressive overload and periodization, it is designed to constantly challenge you so that you don't plateau. That's the whole idea of using periodization. And if you use periodization effectively, it gets far more challenging than for somebody that hasn't been following that style of training very, very quickly. And from phase 5 onwards, we start using overload techniques like drop sets and wave loading and rest pause and 1-5 methods and things like that. And when you get up to phase 6 and beyond, it is way too much to come straight back into after you have had any kind of a break that's more than 5 days off training, or even if you had a month where it was reduced workouts. I did 1 or 2 workouts last week, and it's just not the right thing to do to try to jump straight back in where you left off. What's much smarter is to just go back and do like a 5x5 month where you can work on technique optimization in the fundamental lifts, build up your load tolerance again, and then re-enter where you resumed after several weeks, maybe even 1 or 2 cycles. Because at the end of the day, the whole reason why you're training is to get stronger, more flexible and fitter. That's why you're doing it. It's not to get injured. And the overload techniques aren't the be all and end all. They're just the ways to keep challenging you as your body, as your load tolerance increases and matches it. That's the whole idea of an overload method. It's like, okay, regular 5x5 training or regular 5x8 accumulation training, meaning 5 sets of 8 reps or 5 sets of 5 reps, is not enough now to give you the adaptation that you want. So we're going to throw some overload techniques at you to force adaptation. That's what it is. And if you're not ready for that, it's can really cause problems. And the time that this really stood out to me, Yanni, was when I was chatting to Leroy one time. And Leroy is a friend of ours who's arguably one of the best sports physios in the world. He's at the top of his game. He's been the sports physio for multiple professional sporting teams in Australia, and now he even works internationally. With
LA Lakers as
LA
well,
Lakers,
in
yep.
the NBA.
Like, he's right at the top of his game. And I remember when I was talking to him about this, and he was pointing out to me how the number one cause of injury is when people, in trained individuals, is when people get this wrong. When they go away for a week or 2 weeks and they come back and they try to pick up where they left off. And if you think of, if this is you getting, so this is time, and this is you getting stronger, more flexible and fitter, and you're going like this, the second that you have even more than a week off, your strength, flexibility, fitness, this x-axis goes like this. And then if you try to, as time goes on, when you start training again, jump straight back in there, that's when injuries happen. So even though you've gone like this and now you've come down a bit, when you start back up again, you can't go back to that point. You've got to start back up here and ramp up again. And that would be shown a lot easier if I could show you a graph, but I'm sure you got the idea, right?
Freon, when you edit this, show a graph. What I want to dive into is, what happens? What's the risk? And when we're training and we're trying to improve strength, flexibility, and fitness, it's obvious. It's often referred to as a marathon, not a sprint. The reason why is because every tissue in the body adapts at different rates. So the bones, the nervous system, the musculature system, the tendons and ligaments, they're all adapting at slightly different rates. The nervous system happens fastest, meaning you will feel and you will be able to recruit the muscle to do the movement very, very quickly. And you'll feel like you can do more reps and more reps and more reps and probably lift more weight, more weight, more weight. And if you were to jump in there and try, you might get it up, but The muscle tissue adapts slightly slower. So your muscles will probably fatigue at some point and stop you from lifting. The problem is, unfortunately, the tendons and the ligaments, so the stuff that connects your muscle to your bone and your bone to bone, the ligaments, adapt much, much slower, and bone
Okay,
even slower
everybody, the
still.
warm-up is
And
going
so
to
what we
begin.
tend to experience first when we injure ourselves is like a tendinopathy, an abusive load that can come in one instance or a number of instances that is too much load for the stuff that connects the muscle to the bone, and sometimes even worse, bone to bone, which can be really, really problematic. And those tissues, they adapt much slower because they get less blood flow and they're a harder density of proteins. And the problem is that not only do they adapt slower to exercise, they take a lot longer to repair if you hurt them, if you injure them, if you tear them. And so we want to avoid that at all costs. And that's why it's so important to layer the load in this progressive nature. And we do that through, the different program variables, the different weights that you choose to lift, the different exercise progressions if you're mostly focused on calisthenics. And it's really, really important that people understand this, because you can come in and mess up an entire year of training in one instance by trying to jump into a program overload method that is far beyond what your load capacity can currently take. If you're thinking, okay, and this is what I say, my girlfriend and I have a goal. We're taking the kids on a Disney cruise at the end of the year. And, I said to her, let's be the best rigs on the cruise, just as a little stupid thing. And, but it's fun, you go, yeah, let's, so that's a year. That's happening in January, next year, at the start of January, So my whole training, I always do this. I always sort of stagger my goal to go right through the year. And in that case, starting at, program phase 1 in our UMS would be a great idea, because it's going to progressively load me and take me on that journey throughout the year and have me peaking at just the right time. And a lot of people get this really wrong. And I think this is a great opportunity to segue into, how you should use overload methods, because overload methods, even in our UMS, from phases 5 onwards, the overload methods are designed to progressively get a little bit more complex and a little bit more difficult, a little bit more intense. But that doesn't mean that you should use them always in that order. Once you've gone through, the idea is that you go through and you learn these overload methods, and then they become tools in your toolbox. And just like any toolbox, the right tool for the job right now may not suit another job, and so you're constantly looking at what tool to apply to the moment. And therefore, a phase 7, if you've just had a bit of time off, that's really designed in consideration that you've had 7 months, 7 program or 6 program phases consistently taking place before it. If you've just interrupted that, then it's definitely not going to be suitable for you. And I would argue any overload method, which we're saying here, is not suitable if you've abstained from exercise for 5 or more days, in which case you should go back to probably starting with, either like a technique optimization phase, a structural balance phase if you feel like you've got structural imbalances, or a body composition phase, like what we're doing in the HIIT challenge at the moment in UMS. It's definitely not advised that you dive into a really intense overload method straight away.
Like I did in that video just there. Yeah, absolutely. It's, it's a huge mistake that people are making. Hey, I can see we've got a whole bunch of people on the live stream, which is awesome. If you're getting value out of this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us. And if you've got any questions about what we're talking about, throw them in the comments there, because, we're here to talk to you. This is a live stream, so we want interaction. If you've got anything that you want to add to this conversation or anything that you'd like us to answer, please throw it in the comments there, and we'll answer it.
Shout out to Ricky from Alabama.
Look, I want to, shout out to Ricky. Thanks for jumping on the stream. Look, I want to kind of bring this in for a landing by relating it directly to our UMS app subscribers, because these are the legends who are really making a solid commitment to training 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week in our 40 to 60 minute workouts that train strength, flexibility, and fitness all at the same time. And if you want to know more about that, just go to unitygym.com if you want to know how you can get started. But we've got people that have had a really decent break over the Christmas holidays. I'm one of them. I didn't train nearly as consistently as I did. I think between Christmas and New Year's, I did 2 training sessions. I normally do 5 to 6 training sessions a week. And I think those training sessions, I only did like my minimum workout, which is like a 40-minute workout for me. It's like just doing the UMS warm-up and then just my primary strength and flexibility movements. And it's really just to keep the wheels turning. I did one workout that was upper body focused for strength training and lower body flexibility, and then one workout that was lower body focused for strength and upper body flexibility. Now, if that was you, and you're in our UMS tribe and you're going to watch this, and I really hope you do, because we're going to be sharing it with you, then when you come back to training now, do not try to pick up where you left off. If you are in phase 1, 2, or 3, that's fine. Just keep rocking on. Don't go straight to phase 4. I'd repeat at least 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks of phase 3. And if you're anything beyond phase 4, go back to phase 4 and repeat it, even just for 2 or 3 weeks. You'll find that it's kind of like how long's a piece of string, to ask the question of how long should I do that for. It's basically as long as it takes for you to get back to where you were before you reduced your volume of training. So, and as we've said, it could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be a whole mesocycle. In my experience, if you get back into at least the frequency of training that you were doing before, so let's say you were training 4 days a week before the Christmas break, if you resume that 4 days a week, but you reduce the intensity, in my experience, it doesn't take more than one mesocycle, so 4 weeks of training, to get you right back to where you were before. And the worst thing that you can do right now is to injure yourself. And that's the whole purpose of this. We just want to avoid those injuries, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And before we wrap it up, we've got a question comment here from Ice E Files 2. Been dealing with a shoulder pain for the last 2 years and have taken breaks, but realized that's not what works. Slowly getting back to the gym and building up, but I'm having problems in the front, on the bicep tendon, and my shoulder blade pops when my arm comes down. There's one really key point here that they've made that I want to highlight, which is it's very, very rarely a good idea to take time off training, but it's also not a good idea to try to continue doing what you were doing. Often we feel like it can be for 2 reasons. One, you're told to do it by someone who doesn't quite know what they're doing, or 2, you're given bad advice, or 2, you just psychologically take an absolute bashing and go, oh, well, if I can't train the way I want to train, I'm not going to train at all, and I'll just give it some time and focus on something else for a while. The problem is that if it's an overuse injury, which is the most common from training, it's not an acute injury where you've had a fall and torn something, or done a really sudden traumatic injury, then it'll get worse over time. And if you take a break, and also everything else loses conditioning, creating an environment where you're more prone to new injury. So it's kind of like this double-edged sword. The injury that you're trying to heal gets worse, and you make yourself more susceptible to new injuries because you're losing conditioning and strength everywhere else. So what we like to say is you have to alter the training load and stimulus to suit the weak link. And that doesn't mean that if you've got a shoulder injury, you can't train legs properly anymore, but you obviously, you can't do super heavy low bar barbell back squats that are going to put an enormous amount of stress on the shoulder if you've got a shoulder injury. You're going to have to figure out a way of training around that so that it doesn't make the problem worse. But stimulus to the injured area, unless there is an obvious muscle tear, where if you do a certain movement, it keeps reopening or re-aggravating that muscle tear, and it's not letting the tissues come back together and heal properly. In that instance, you've got to do something that's going to increase blood flow and help the healing process, but not re-aggravate it. And that's where a good physiotherapist or physical therapist can work with you to help you with that. Or you can get advice from people like myself and Rad in the UMS. But it's very, very important that everyone adopt this mindset that, okay, I've got an issue, I'm compromised in some way, I'm going to figure out how to work around this so that it benefits my whole body and I don't lose conditioning even more so, you know. And often that means if you've been very focused on strength training, you're probably going to get your biggest win from diverting a large portion of your effort, energy, and intention to flexibility training and try to iron out that structural imbalance that's been occurred. Because remember, imbalances can come from one of four things: either an imbalance between your strength and flexibility, so your skill attributes; an imbalance between the structures in a joint, agonist, antagonist, so think chest and back or biceps and triceps; an imbalance between the inner and outer units, so think stability muscles, core muscles, rotator cuff, as opposed to the big phasic movements; or an imbalance between left and right side symmetry. Any one or more of those things can create an environment where you're more prone to injury, or it will restrict your progress. And so we always want to make sure that we're sort of self-evaluating all four of those areas and thinking, okay, where am I going to get my biggest win? How long has it been since I've done a structural balance specific program to even out left to right side, where we're doing more unilateral movements as opposed to bilateral movements? Or how long has it been since I've done a structural balance program that is very, very focused on agonist antagonist muscle recruitment and balance, so that I'm working opposing joint structures, systems, muscle systems in balance, or figuring out whether there's an imbalance there and sorting that out? How often am I including remedial exercises and supplementary or auxiliary exercises that support the big primary movers, like your external and internal rotation for the rotator cuff in relation to your bench press and things of the sort? You know, and then also, how much flexibility training am I doing and end range strength training am I doing in relation to my strength training? Because any imbalance in those areas, if performance, high levels of performance is something that you really want, you're gonna run into very strong headwinds, and your progress is going to be stifled quite dramatically in some cases.
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm just nerding out as to how good my video editing's going on here. You know, cutting to all these footages of me, and I'm trying to find footage of you, but we just don't have as much of it. I'm not. So Icy Files has said I've been to I've been to 6 months of PT, maybe even more. I think what I need is a specific breakdown program to go in the steps. Listen, I always feel terrible doing a shameless plug like this, but I have to do it. And Andy, are you still on here? Can you just say, hey, yes, I'm still here if you are. The truth is that you're right. If you've been doing something for 6 months and it's not getting better, then you absolutely need to try something new. I would say after 3 months. If you're doing something...
mate, I would say after 28 days.
After Jesus. 28 days. Can I hang on? Let me finish, Andy. When people join the... Andy, if you can, I'd love what you've got to say about this, because you recently had... an injury, and you've been with us for so many years now that you've gone through some ups and downs yourself. Maybe you can shed some light on what I'm about to say here and the value of the UMS. But we've had people that have had really traumatic injuries. Recently, in recent years, I've had a labrum tear in both shoulders, and it's the UMS, it's following the UMS that got me out of it. Yanni's rehabilitated a full ACL tear. We've had people that have had really bad lower back problems, you name it. And people come into the UMS, and within 28 days, they talk about significant reduction in pain, even complete loss of pain from injuries and pain that they've been dealing with for years. And, you can go and look at our Google reviews to see if that validates it. And again, I know this is a shameless plug, but the truth is, Good programming you will see an immediate reduction in pain within a matter of weeks. Like within 2 weeks, you will start to see, wow, I'm
You
starting to
should.
see the light at the
Yeah,
end of the
you
tunnel.
should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if you
That doesn't mean, let me just make it very quickly. That doesn't mean that your issue is going to be solved in 28 days, but there should be a decent improvement.
That's
You
right.
know,
A reduction in pain, like something
yeah,
that where you objectively can go, wow, I feel like I'm moving better now. I feel like I'm working towards an improvement. And if you're not feeling that within 28 days, for most cases, I would argue that you need to look to doing something else. And so, if you're saying, I think what I need is a specific broke down program to go, to get the steps, try the UMS. I mean, it's a very low cost, and it's if you consider what you get from it, and you can cancel whenever you want, so you're not locked into anything. Just give it a try. You've really got nothing to lose because it's less than $2 a day. So yes, I agree absolutely that you probably do need to do more of a specific program.
as a general comment for everyone watching, if your program is not doesn't have an emphasis on structural balance from agonist to antagonist muscle systems, meaning that your horizontal pushing is balanced with horizontal pulling, and your squatting is balanced with hamstring and hip band movements, and your vertical pushing isn't balanced with your vertical pulling, and you're not balancing your big phasic prime movers with the auxiliary exercises that promote stability in the joints and all that sort of stuff, then it's probably worth looking to find a coach or a program that does understand that sort of stuff. And there are plenty out there that it's not just us that do this. There are many great coaches and programs, and we get that sometimes people prefer to train face-to-face with people, and there are plenty of trainers out there that actually teach our program now. I go to the gym, the local public gym, and there's 3 trainers up there that have done or are doing our program. And I see reflections of that in all of their clients' routines and workout. And that's great, because we're not the only ones. Like we've adopted this and stolen this from other people. We're disciples of many great coaches around the world ourselves. So I would just make sure for specificity for ICE files, make sure that your trainer has an understanding of these structures and systems in the body, because if not, and you've got an existing issue, just training really without the right structure or without the right direction can make it, worse in some cases. So I would just be asking those questions and really make sure that you're, it's like a lot of people say, we've got a lot of friends who are physical therapists and physiotherapists in Australia. That's what we call it. And they always say, I hate it when I hear someone say, I tried physio and it didn't work. I tried personal training and it didn't work. It's because there's such a diverse spectrum of skill sets with physiotherapists and personal trainers. And on one end of the spectrum, you've got really scholarly people with PhDs and a lot of skin in the game. And at the other end of the spectrum, you got people who really, in some cases, I would argue, don't know what they're doing. And so, yeah, just make sure that you end up with someone who really has a bit of skin in the game. And I guess one way to look at that is, are they doing what you're trying to do? Have they achieved what you're trying to achieve?
Yep, sorry, my microphone was muted. That's a really big point. Have they achieved the results that you're looking for with either themselves or with their members? Andy's chimed in here and said, to my question, what do you think about the UMS? How's it works for managing your injuries? He said, been a roller coaster for sure. The superior programming and work with the tribe definitely brings the secret sauce to getting things improving, whatever the circumstances you're coming from. The guys have had me recovering from downtime after COVID, and most recently a horrible virus that wiped me out completely for 6 weeks. Thanks, Andy. Yeah, look, it's... the reason I said, I appreciate that Yanni's chimed in and said, hey, you can do it with other people too. I've seen so many people suffer the fate of investing heavily in poor programming with somebody that just doesn't really understand how to give them a program that's going to get them the result that they need. And so that's why I said it. And, you know, if you're not willing or ready to jump in and try the UMS IC files, scour our channel. Watch the videos that I post every day, because we always talk about this stuff. We're always giving away free content that's trying to give people just the most basic understanding. And at the most basic understanding, if you look at what Yanni said, if you balance pushing and pulling in the horizontal and vertical plane, you might need to restrict vertical plane at the start of any journey of coming out of pain in the shoulders. That can often be, exacerbate
Too
the
aggravating.
pain. It can aggravate the pain. But balance pushing and pulling in a 1-to-1 ratio, balance upper and lower body strength in a 1-to-1 ratio, include unilateral work and bilateral work. So dumbbell work and barbell work, or work where you're doing like split squats versus squats, balance strength and flexibility, balance the inner unit and outer unit of prime movers versus stabilization systems. So in the shoulder, you know, balancing work where you're doing horizontal push and pull with rotator cuff work and scapular stabilizer work. For the lower body, it's a bit simpler. It's just doing unilateral work and bilateral work. And also, you know, deeper core work, you know, core stabilization work. And that sounds like, oh my God, that's so much. It's hard to wrap your head around how to put it all into a program. But if you watch our videos, you'll start to understand more.
And that's really, I think, the key to UMS is that we put that into either a 40-minute or a 60-minute workout, and it's all done for you. And we also, inside the app, help you customize it to your needs, your schedule, your specific goals, and all that sort of thing. So, you know, if you've made it this far, definitely check it out, unitygym.com. Otherwise, we should bring this in for a landing. It's 30,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's been a while.
minutes.
Yep. Andy, I love your last comment there. He said, there's so much free content out here from Unity. I followed that initially 4 years ago, and then I joined up fully when I realized how well it all worked. And the last thing that I want to say is, based on what Andy just said, what Yanni just said, just remember that time is a really valuable asset. So people think to themselves, you know, I don't want to outlay the cost of investing in a good program. Ask yourself how much your time is worth, because if you invest a lot of time every week in trying to figure out how to do this stuff yourself, that's a cost. So, you know, just be aware of what cost you're putting in to what you're getting out.
Well, in this specific example, you know, we've got a case here of 6 months. Dealing with the shoulder issue for the last year. You know, and there's going to be a lot of people in this group or watching this who have a compromise or an injury that they've been dealing with for multiple months, if not years. And you need to ask yourself at this point, what have you missed out on? What's that held you back? What could you have achieved in that number of months, years, or whatever that you haven't because of this injury? You know, not just on a physical level. How often has it got you down emotionally, psychologically, mentally? How much money have you invested in trying to solve this issue? When you start to add all of this up, the cost of getting the right program that's going to solve the problem is absolutely nothing in comparison. You know, I know what it's like to be compromised. I know what it's like to be injured. I've suffered some enormously terrible injuries, like really, really life-changing injuries over my life. And I know that it goes far beyond just the physical pain that you experience. It has a mental effect. It has a psychological impact on your life that affects relationships, that affects work, that affects everything. So just really think about that and weigh that up, and you know, start to think about what it has cost you based on how long you've been suffering this and not found the right solution.
Absolutely, yeah. And look, guys, thanks for tuning in. We're going to bring this in for a landing now. If you've gotten this far, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit us up with any questions that you have. And for those of you who like seeing this stuff, we are making an intention.
Triumphant comeback.
We're making a triumphant comeback. This is our first test. I had to work out how to use OBS. I hope I did okay. And we plan on going live Friday morning at 9 a.m. Sydney time. So you'll have to check what that time is. But Andy, you'd be used to that when we used to go live. But we're going to be doing that this week. So Friday morning, 9 a.m. Sydney time. Put it in your calendars and get any questions in that you want us to answer, because that's what we're here for. We're here to help you all in your training and make sure that you achieve the results that you want.
Just very quickly on that, anyone who comments a question in this video once it gets uploaded, we'll scour these at the end, or we'll have one of our team do that, and we'll make sure that we answer your questions in the next live.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that chat, and we will see you.
Smash the like button. Hit that subscribe bell. Let's go. 2023.
See you later, everyone.